So, racer turned broadcaster, Calvin Fish. If you could describe this dinner we just had in one word, what would it be?
Hungover.
I'm pretty sure that's two.
That's
hung?
one. That's one.
Can I be hung?
You can be hung.
You can be hung, yeah.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
Dinner with Racers. Somehow we have a second season, so welcome. I am one of the hosts, Sean Heckman,
I'm one of the other hosts, Ryan Eversley.
and we are literally driving to LAX as we record. This is the end of a 40-day journey across 29 states, 12,000 miles in a Honda Odyssey with what kind of tires, Ryan?
Continental Tires.
And all to deliver you a free podcast with 28 different people in the racing industry. So during the first round of our travels, we started in Georgia after the Petit Le Mans weekend. Met up with Johnny O'Connell, met with Ryan's dad. But one of the really cool people who also lives in the Atlanta area is none other than Calvin Fish. Now, Calvin, most of you would know him as a commentator, but the thing that people may not realize about Calvin is that not only was he a driver back in the day, but a pretty badass driver. He drove in Europe in junior categories, racing against some upstart driver named Ayrton Senna.
People might have heard of him. And he was known as the guy to beat Senna. That was kind of his call to fame back then.
After that, went on, did some sports car stuff, was part of the ever-famous Roush Gong show, and just one of the coolest, most accommodating guys you could meet up with.
He happened to be our first special word that we hadn't heard yet before, which you'll pick up on later on in the episode. Talked about some of the cooler guys to party with in the industry, and also talks about walking around naked in hotels.
So we met up at Crispina on Cobb Parkway in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's an interesting restaurant to say the least.
I had the scallops, I believe, and I think you had...
Oh, I had a chicken sandwich.
Right.
And but the roach that walked across the floor was complimentary.
Yeah, that was on the house, and we have photos of it.
We have photos, and we do talk about it in the episode.
Just tweet me, and I'll send you the picture, because I'll be able to post it then.
Yep. So, all right, Calvin Fish, you heard it here first. Well, really only heard it here exclusively.
Dinner with Racers. Continental Tire.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
45.
Oh, it was him.
Holy
Cool.
it really was.
Look at it, dude.
Yeah.
Dude's looking swole.
Yeah. No, he got a workout in.
Just left the gym.
There he is.
Did the
I like
hair.
it. All right.
He doesn't look like he knows where the door is.
You can sit wherever you want if you want to sit closer to Ryan.
We got stove. Just a little while ago.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah.
We never know what we're gonna get when we start setting up. You know, God knows what kind of technical problems we're gonna have, but this one went smooth, so we're all good. Have you ever worn a headset before? We're off to a good start.
You use that same joke on Varsha.
Yeah, I got one joke. This is, like, I can't speak for either of you, but you know how you start turning into your parents more and more? It actually makes me angry because my dad will pull the exact same joke on me, like 5 years straight.
Right.
And I'm getting angry not because it's the same joke, because I'm realizing, oh, Dad, this is exactly what I'm looking at in my future.
I do
It's
this.
terrible. Yeah. So.
Do you have your Bob Varsha notes up and you're just going one by one?
Yeah, I'm just going to do the exact same questions.
So when you
We're
did
good to
ESPN.
go. So do you like figure skating, Cal?
No, it's not me. I actually got thrown off an ice skating rink once in Chicago.
Oh, for what?
Yeah, for going too slowly and holding on to the rail all the way around. They said, you got to go quicker or get out of here.
It wasn't for picking a fight?
No, I wasn't picking a
I
fight.
thought it was going to be for like being belligerently drunk.
Yeah.
You know, because I've been yelled at a skating rink for
That
that.
was last night.
How did that go, by the way?
It went okay, yeah. I mean, they're always a bit stressful, do you know what I mean? Because you want them to go right.
Right. Let me have you move it just a little away from your mouth.
And
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
And
You want something to drink?
yeah, could I get a glass of red wine, just a Merlot or something would be great. Cheers.
Can I have one as well? Thank you.
It's gonna go real well now.
But it went good. I realize I need to get some glasses next year. They have the teleprompters way at the back of the ballroom.
Sure.
And the font's pretty big,
Right.
which is good.
Right.
But it's also bags. That means you get about 3 words per line. So when you're sailing Tequila Patron North American Endurance Cup, co-champions, blah, 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 you never know where the sentence ends. It's like you're running downhill and you don't know when to stop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like an abrupt period.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I should have stopped there. But that went good. We had a few lighthearted moments. I got Westy great. I got a real zinger on him, which was pretty funny. That brought the house
You're
down.
not going to leave it at that.
Huh?
You're not going to leave it at that.
You are not.
Out with it, yeah.
So Westy's been known for some of his accessories being a little bit dubious. So he showed up at Daytona. I think it was last year with his man bag, and I gave him a real ration of shit about it. So I think I got to get him. So Crispina had been up to get her award. So we're going through I think we did the team first, then we did third place, and Garcia wasn't there, but Jan came up. And so Westy's about to come up with Ryan. So you're up at the podium, you got like the headset on, so it's like, oh, we've got a problem.
Right.
So everyone like stops talking. Yeah, problem backstage, okay. Understand.
Thank you.
We have a problem, folks. Crispina has walked off with Richard Westbrook's man bag. And let's bring up our second place finishers, Ryan Briscoe and Westy. Brian loved it.
That works.
It's kind of it's interesting.
Cheers.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Thank you
inviting
for being out here.
So last year we kind of started this a little bit earlier in the year, but the timing, Varsha's episode was the morning after.
The morning after.
He
It was like
hosted,
11 a.m.
Breakfast, lunch, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, following day for you as well. So how hungover are you?
I'm pretty. I called it a day at 2, and the boys were going hard. We had like a little after party thing outside the
Chateau.
banquet. Yeah, but on the outside patio. It's really cool because it was a nice night. And they started shutting that down probably about 12:30. So when we went to the upstairs bar, we were there till 2, and then everyone was disappearing downstairs to somewhere else. And Heather, my wife, just said, I got to go to bed. And I said, I really need to go to bed too. So this happened at some point. I'm not sure.
That's a good look.
That's actually really good for us because.
So that's Joey Hand and you. We can post that on the.
Yeah, but he's our next guest.
He's
right?
our next guest. Yeah, he will be
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. Let's go ahead and we'll jump around a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
So that photo's with you and Joey Hand. And this we normally do this more towards the end of the interview, but since we're talking about Joey, we have a segment, a pass along segment, where the guest from the previous episodes asks a question for the next guest. So if you could ask any question in the world to Joey Hand, what would it be?
Wiener Schnitzel or Mexican?
Ooh, that's
Okay.
good. I can write that
All
down.
right.
That's quick to the point.
Haven't spent a bit of time in Europe with him. He got addicted to Wiener Schnitzel, but he loves Mexican. So
Interesting.
curious to see where his head is at these days.
To kind of go the other direction, we had dinner with my dad last night. His question for you was a pretty obvious question. I think you probably get it a lot. But what led you to the decision to stop racing? I should say as a driver.
I think to the question, why did I decide to stop? I really didn't. I mean, it just kind of materialized. It was one of those deals where the career had slowed down anyway, and I was just doing the endurance races, Daytona Sebring, to earn a check and try and scrape through the year as best I could with that.
Right.
And consequently started to do ride and drive programs, and before you know it, you've kind of got off track because you're trying to pay your bills, and you're not at a racetrack every week, and before you know it, you're doing more and more ride and drives and staying further and further away from a racetrack. And so it wasn't a conscious decision like I'm going to stop racing. 95 was the last race I did
Right.
for Paul Gentilozzi, actually, with the Oldsmobile deal
Okay.
at Sebring. And, so I was 34 years old, so it wasn't like I was too old to keep going, but just the opportunity wasn't there. But it's been great. The industry's been called to me. I've been so lucky to have stayed in the game that I really have a lot of passion for in different ways. This year's like 20 years with Speed Vision / Speed Fox Sports. So that's really cool, and just love what I do. I mean, very lucky to work with some great people.
Right.
And, the team chemistry aspect just like in racing is so important. That's the same with what we do, because you got to dig deep and you got to cover each other and cover your back. And no, it's been really fun.
I kind of want to go back to the ride and drive thing real quick, because every time I mention this in front of a fan, they don't know what a ride and drive is, because it's not publicized, obviously.
Right.
But basically, a ride and drive is when a new product, generally a vehicle, but also sometimes other tires and things like that, get launched. They'll hire a bunch of pro drivers to go kind of run the exercises and keep people safe and educate them.
Right.
And so a lot of drivers, when they don't have rides, will end up doing ride and drives for all sorts of different manufacturers.
And there's basically like a couple of companies that are out there.
Yeah, exactly.
That like they're just the guys that you call, and they've got kind of their team of drivers that, they say, hey, Sean Jones, we need your guys, and then all of a sudden they show up, and this week it's Continental, next week it's Honda or whatever.
Yeah, Lally used to talk about him, because when he was doing them, he was probably maybe around this. When were you doing those things? Back in
early 90s, when I worked for a company called Proformance who are at Phoenix, and they got the Infinity deal when Infinity launched their franchise.
Sure.
So it was literally every 6 weeks they brought in like 200 or 300 people to learn about the product.
Right.
So it was like, I think we'd go out there for 4 days at a crack, and they'd bring in probably 3 waves of people. I think it was like a day and a half each, and it kind of overlapped. But I mean, if you had a race with the guys that we had doing ride and drives back there, you had John Paul Jr., Tommy Byrne. I mean, it was fun. Paul Darnback, some really good guys. And but it was back when we were all a bit younger. So we used to stay at this Hilton Garden Inn out near Firebird, where we used to do the events. So every night, you'd start the weekend off slowly and like maybe a midnight touch, and you had to outdo the night before. It had to be a better story the next day, first night we're there, and Tommy Byrne and I have always been really strong mates, and so we came back, and that's riding around on the luggage trolley, bit of fun. Hey, what time in the morning? Yeah, see you in the morning. Hadn't had a big night at all. 2:30 in the morning, I wake up naked in the elevator. And the only reason I wake up is because 3 people are getting on the elevator. Yeah. 2 birds and this guy, and they're just looking at me, and I just turn and stand in the corner like, what the hell is going on? So I wake up, and I'm thinking, so I hit 3, I think it was, got off, and then I'm thinking, well, what do I do now? I am like butt naked. I don't have a stitch on. So there's like 3 people I knew their rooms. Well, back then, you did not open your door at that time of night, because you were going to get like shaven foam or dragged out or whatever. So it's like, but you try to knock on someone's door but not wake the rest of the floor up, right? So
because you're naked.
So when I'm like, in the end, I guess just get so pissed. So I go down and think I'll just run out to the pool and grab a towel. So back down in the elevator, and it's like, across the corner there. Go out there. There's a bunch of people out there at 2:30 in the morning having a chat. So now I'm like, I just marched to the front desk. As I marched to the front desk, there's these 2 old ladies just sitting there like watching me go by. And there's this young boy who used to work, or young man who used to work at the front desk. I can't remember his name, but he just looks at me. I say, don't say a word. Just give me a room. I didn't even ask for a towel. Walked straight back past the two old ladies. And so I was Naked Gun 1.5, and Sushi in the Roar, and all the... Otis, I think, was my... elevator was the nickname for a few years there. And I've never slept walk since, and I hadn't before, so I don't know what was going on. And we hadn't been out having a crazy time. It was like first night of the week, but...
then it makes sense.
Yeah. Thinking about it now, I just get like in a cold sweat.
Yeah, like never again.
Yeah.
So in the current crop, then, who can go the hardest within the broadcast group?
Oh, who I work with? Currently,
or just over the years.
Well, Stiffy's hard to run with. Lee Diffie, he's a
Stiffy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's public. His name.
I've heard him call that.
No, I've heard it before too. Yeah. But anyway,
he's fun. He's my best mate, and but yeah, JB's called to go out for a beer with Justin, and Brian and I used to hit it hard, but we kind of have to tone it down.
Yeah, you're family men now, right?
We get hurt, but and we got a good group. They're all fun guys. Yeah.
One of the names you mentioned earlier, Tommy Byrne, his book is Crashed and Burned, and he's famous for getting to test the McLaren F1 car, and then famously said this thing's a pile of to Ron Dennis, who was like,
there's
much more to the story. I'm not giving it away because I hope one day we have him on here and he could tell that story. But I actually, the first ride and driver I worked, he was on it, for BMW program at Stone Mountain, Georgia, and he was working his ass off. I mean, he was like nonstop moving and shaking and like getting stuff done. And then he's probably your age.
Yeah, I think he's a year or two older.
And
He might be 58 now, yeah.
Yeah, and he was the hardest working guy there, and he was also the first one. I was like, all right, where are we drinking? You know, where's the party? I was like, this guy's got it down. Like,
Well, I don't think a lot of people know. Like in a arrive and drive, it's not just you're just driving somebody around the passenger seat. You're putting out cones and setting in hay bales.
I've been to them where you literally stood there all day just holding a sign. You know, it's like right this way.
But it becomes a syndrome because when you're trying to earn a crust, it's like more is better, right? X times X. So you keep taking them and taking them. But just that's really when you ask the first question is like,
Because
where
every
did
day
your career
you're
go?
doing this.
You're just away from the racetrack and
right.
you're not doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
And you're starting to rely on that income,
Yep.
which is the dangerous part of it, I assume.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it worked, and you know, there are other ways for me to get back in. You know, with the TV stuff has been a blessing, really.
Right.
I did a little bit of it early '90s. Vicky O'Connor, who used to operate the Pro Atlantic Championship.
Right.
I actually drove for her and her husband Bill. They were kind enough to put me in an Atlantic car when we won the championship back in '87. And when I stopped doing Atlantics, she said, "Do you want to come and do some guest, you know, play-by-play type stuff?" And so I did a few. And Jim McCallion was doing the production back then. Guy who runs Long Beach Grand Prix. He and Chris Pook had a production company, so we used to do the Atlantics and a few Pro Sports 2000 races, but never looked at it as a career. As just another way to
to
earn
keep
a grand
yourself out
and
there.
you know.
Well, at least you're at the track doing that stuff. Sure.
And then fortunately, what is that on the wall?
That's a cockroach.
That is a cockroach.
That is a cockroach.
That is a giant cockroach.
We're going to document said cockroach.
Over, Go for it, Ryan.
You bring one yourself every time. It's good for a free meal.
That's right. You just let it out on the table. So kind of going down that road of starting the TV stuff out. One of the questions I've always wondered about you, because you do a good job at it. So does Dorsey and some of the other guys that used to race. Did you do any sort of after you kind of, because you just kind of started it cold, right? They were like, hey, you want to do some TV stuff? And
You
like,
really
okay.
do sink or swim.
Yeah.
You kind of
So there was
put you out there.
no school,
Right.
Yeah.
Have you on your own gone since then and tried to further yourself as a broadcaster or commentator? Have you taken classes or read anything?
No,
or
but
just-
it's a really valid question, and I think probably we should.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you watch, replays of the shows and stuff, and you're very critical of oneself, just like doing a banquet last night. It's like, oh, it's great. It's like, well, you didn't notice that? Well, no, but it's like calling a race. No one knows what intended to come out of your mouth other than you. So if it didn't come out, it's like they're not reading the script. And
But I assume that's also the good side about drivers, that if you're competitive by nature, so therefore you don't want to just call it in that day.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Varsha referred to you as a perfectionist when we did the show with him, because he was saying that you would make sure you got all your lines right and everything for the banquets and stuff like that, make sure you didn't mess it up.
Well, I think you hate to fail. Do you know what I mean? You hate to let people down. I mean, when you're doing TV, you're representing the series, the network, and everything else. So you need to do your homework. I mean, I think one of the difficulties this year for us with the IMSA Championship, since Daytona, we've not been on site calling the races.
Yeah.
And
just put some perspective on that. I don't know, in case people don't know, listening to this, the vast majority, actually basically everything but Daytona, was done in Charlotte.
That's right.
At the studio. So you're literally just watching a TV feed, effectively no different than what they're seeing at home, with maybe a few extra monitors. And you're just going off the information that you're given. You have no way of talking to anybody, smelling it, all that sort of thing.
Once the race starts, it's actually okay. So we've got a nice setup there. Sometimes actually better than we might have had at the track. The difficulty is the networking through the weekend, the information.
It's all the
flow.
backstories that you don't know.
We obviously get on the phone and we text, and if we need some questions, we've got the pit guys are there. So it's not like you're totally in left field, but it does make a big difference. And with the race weekends, the way they're set up, with the Conti race the day before, if you back time the weekend, it's like, well, you could go in and then go to the studio, but you have to be there. So if it's a Saturday IMSA race, Friday Conti, you've got to be in Charlotte by Thursday night.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the IMSA guys aren't even rolling in there till Thursday lunchtime.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? It's like I'd be there on a Tuesday, but no one to talk to, so it doesn't work.
So thinking about a guy like, say, Parker Kligerman, who, he's, I would say, a very similar situation now that you were in at that age, where, he was still in a when Parker started doing more broadcast stuff, he was in a really, really good career position. Or he's still young
actually
enough that he can still do it. He's still very talented. He can still bring results. He's just not getting the opportunities that he wanted. I assume there's a certain level of humility that he goes through to start doing his first couple TV gigs, because it's effectively saying, I'm not driving right now. Was there any of that for you when you first started doing the broadcast side?
No, I was cool with it. I mean, I think because when I started doing it for Speed Vision, I hadn't raced full time for half a dozen years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd just been doing the endurance races. So I realized this was my opportunity. I mean, how I got introduced to Speed Vision was I was actually coaching up at Motorsport with Don Bagoon, who owned Performance Friction, and unfortunately tragically passed away last year in a road accident. And we were coaching up there, and Derek Daly was up. I think they were doing a Trans Am race or something. And they were also going to cover the Formula 4 2000 race. So he walks up to you and says, man, I got this race this afternoon, don't know any of the players in there. So this guy was with him, Jeff Hallis, who was the producer. And some just went through the grid sheet with him and gave him a little snip on all the guys in the race. And Jeff's standing there, and he said, have you done any television? I said, yeah, I did a little bit a long time ago. And he said, do you want to do some more? I said, sure.
Were you lying?
Huh?
Were you lying?
Lying about?
I've done some TV before, knowing that if you said no, you're clearly not going to get on the air.
No, I mean, I didn't know where it was going to go, but he gave me. He said, "Well, we've got a race at the Glen in a couple of weeks. If you can come and help us out." So did that, and he said, "Oh, it went well," and gave me 6 more races, and so I was into it. You know what I mean? I wasn't hedging my bets. I mean, I realized that it was going to be really tough for me to get back in a race car.
Right.
And still, like I mentioned, it's still relative mid-30s. It's like you're giving up on your love very early, but you've also been through the cycle a couple of times. I went through the cycle in Europe and then came here and went through the cycle again, where you almost get there and you just fall down the other side and picking up the pieces. So I was ready to put 100% of the effort that I put into racing into another part of the sport, and so I really tried to grab it with both hands and really run with it. Yeah.
I was reading an article on you recently where someone asked you about Senna, which we'll get into at some point, but the name that popped up that was close to my heart, I was like, whoa, Ed Devlin.
Yeah.
Because when Ben Devlin came over in 2001, I was a mechanic at Archangel, and he worked with us, for 2 or 3 years and became friends from that. And I knew his dad owned the bar, Ed's Cafe or whatever, near Snetterton in England, but I didn't realize that he owned it for that long and that you had been there and Senna had been there and everything. So that to me seems like it would have been a really cool time to be kind of around that stuff. And it doesn't surprise me that Ben ended up becoming, pretty prolific driver himself.
Yes. Kind of brought up around that environment. But yeah, we should chat about that. It's a good memory, actually. I mean, it was a real hotbed. I mean, in terms of motorsport, Norfolk and Snetterton Circuit especially. We had a workshop. Well, first year I did full season of cars. I ran with Russian Green, which was kind of the semi-works.
Well, and so to sort of set this up, I mean, a lot of people don't. I think most people who hear you on the broadcast figure out that you were obviously a driver at one point. I don't think people really know who you competed with in the era that you really kind of made your name. And so that
is a good point. I've mentioned it before to certain people in passing, and they're like, oh, I didn't know he had raced that much.
So obviously you started in karts?
Starting karts, 1974. Got a Christmas present, like a little small horsepower go-kart, just to go out to an airfield and bash around, and really didn't take it serious. It was just fun, just something to do. And then we...
Now, up until that point, what kind of kid were you? Were you like a little shit? Were you a pretty good kid? Was this a way to make you
good? I loved
behave?
Soccer. Soccer was my big thing, so I used to live and breathe soccer as soon as you put the shoes on.
Did they mind that you called it soccer?
Yeah, I didn't call it soccer. It's weird. I didn't know who to root for in the Ryder Cup now. I've been here so long, It's, it's very bizarre. But... yeah, so we just transitioned that over so we could go do some racing with it, just at local events, and then we started to go down to London to the bigger events where there's a lot more competition. Sure. And pretty quickly I actually moved up to shifter karts, 250cc superkarts, which were really cool.
In the 70s? I didn't know that was around.
Yeah, it would have been 77 or 78 when I first started racing shifter karts. My dad had moved down, my mum and dad split up, my dad had moved down to the south of England near Devon. And there was a great guy down there called Malcolm Turner. He owned a butcher shop, Turner's Butchers, and he used to race shifter karts. Yeah. So my dad had met him somehow, and he said, I'll get the boy out of the 100cc. Let's go and do some shifter kart racing. I'll tune the motors and this, that, and the other. So we went and did that. And really enjoyed it. It was good for me. And then Martin Hines asked me to race for him with the Hermitite Zip team, which was like the big team at the time.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. Supercars back then was big. I mean, I think at the Silverstone Grand Prix, 79 or 80, I think we had 200 supercarts.
Wow.
It was like a E&F final.
Were supercarts at that time running the full tracks, or were they running kart tracks? Oh, so
Full
you were running
tracks.
Silverstone.
Yeah, we went Silverstone Grand Prix circuit.
Wow.
That's
super cool. Holy
Yeah.
crap. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that was a thing in the 80s.
It was
but-
really cool because it was back in the days when the Formula One cars had the ceramic skirts. And so Woodcut Chicane, we used to use the bike track that went straight around the outside, whereas the cars used to go in and out. But with the ceramic skirts, they used to like put real hard grooves on the line. Yeah. So as you came into Woodcut, it was flat in 6, and you'd come through there, and just the cart would just do this. And the problem was that it was pulling the tire off the bead off the rim. So you put these little studs in, but it was really hairy because the catch fencing was set up. For cars, and with the carts, if you went in the catch fencing, you'd literally ride up the nose cone and then up the steering column, and
right into you.
So it was really wild, and they were bloody quick. I mean, I mean that was, but the first years were air cooled, so they weren't as quick as when we switched to water cooled. But we were probably 145 down the straightaways. I mean, I think our average lap at Silverstone was close to 115 miles an hour for the lap. It was good. It was good fun.
Helmets back then were probably pretty good too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's fast now.
Yeah. But that's good times.
Yeah. Well, also it sounds like you didn't have funding just at your disposal to go play with stuff, so you're getting kind of a favor of a ride. And then
I mean, my dad was working hard. He was a partner in a used car dealership, so he had a little bit of money to spend, but we just couldn't.
Yeah, it's not like it was going to carry you up to Formula One. Or
whatever. I mean, you could come up, a few grand a year, but that was about it.
Right.
It wasn't going to go much further, so we needed support. But got a deal. There was a chassis out of Denmark called Dino, and there was a card importer in the UK who said, "Oh, if you come and drive our car, we'll give you some money to go car racing." So that was how I broke into car racing, by switching from Zip over to the Dino chassis.
So sort of a trade out.
Yeah, we did some karts and did the car racing at the same time. That's how we got into it. And we just did like 3 races in Formula Ford, and found that difficult to like transit. It kind of felt really sloppy, radial tires, and then I tested a Formula Ford 2000. It's like, this is more like what I've been doing.
They're probably slower than your go-karts.
Yeah, exactly. Because at Snedderton, it's funny, Sam being based at Snedderton, I mean, the track literally would be open every day of the week for testing, but it was like really no rules.
Right.
I tested my supercar on the same day as Roberto Guerrero in a Formula One car. And I remember coming down, there's a really fast corner called Russell right before the pits, and you'd got no mirrors on a car. So I'd had a look on the straightaway and seen him and come down into Russell, and he comes by me on the inside, and so you're sitting down here, like your head's like here, and that Formula One rear tire is like right there, and he zipped in front of me. I was like, scared the crap out of me. We were there one night, and we were out there testing, and Lotus were there with Mario Andretti.
Oh, nice.
And Peter War.
Yeah.
And Mario came over and was like the coolest guy.
Yeah.
He was he was totally into it. I know everything about the car.
Yeah.
Walked around super friendly, super cool.
And you were how old at this time?
I would have been 18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was giving Peter War shit, like, why are we spending this much money? And I'm only like 3 seconds quicker than this guy.
You point something out that from everything I at that era, you don't want to know how old I was, or he wasn't even born, but it seemed to me from what I read that in that era, your junior divisions, your F2000, your Formula Fords, your F3, they had such a thing as factory drivers because they had multiple marks that were in the series. So there was, Ralt competing against, I don't know, Dallar or whoever else, Van Diemen. So I don't want to say there was more opportunity, but it seemed like there were ways that if you were fast and proved yourself to the chassis manufacturer, they would let a young guy get free gear, or they'd pay him, or whatever.
Absolutely.
It was.
Yeah. I mean, that's really how Senna arrived on the scene. I mean, Chico Serra, another Brazilian who was kind of Ayrton's mentor back then, had been promising Ralph Furman, I'll bring the fast man one day. And Ralph always had a steady stream of really fast South Americans coming through the door who would win his championships and fill up the order book for the next year. And it's kind of a cycle, and suddenly Ayrton showed up, and he had done such amazing things in karts, obviously. So he already had a bit of a mantle before he even walked through the door.
Right.
And had a bit. I think they had him in an old car or something at the start of the year, so it was kind of a slow start. But then he just went on a tear and won the championships and everything.
Right.
And then at the end of the year, talking about Tommy Byrne, Ayrton said he's out of here. Was like going to retire back to Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
1 year of car racing, and Ralph was like in trouble because he had to have someone in his car for the festival.
Yeah.
So he calls up Tommy. He said, "Can you win it?" And Tommy said, "Sure."
No problem. Yeah.
So he goes out. And, he's been driving Formula 3 cars and Formula 4 2000 cars, and gets back in this, and he said, "Whoa, this is a struggle." And he did win, but there was an older guy, Rick Morris, who was like a stalwart in Formula Fords, was on Tommy's ass for the whole 20-lap final, and Tommy just brought it home. But he was under a lot of pressure. But getting to your point, yes, if you were good, the factories needed the quick guy in the car because it was car sales.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It wasn't one man. It's not like today in specs, everybody, it's one chassis in, formerly Formula Atlantics we used one chassis for the last few years. If you want to go run Pro Mazda or F4, it's all one car. And so it's very, very different from that time.
Yeah.
So,
But, Formula 3 back then was kind of dominated by Ralt. You had a few, Magnum had a chassis, and there was another car, I can't remember.
were those for the bigger guys? Sorry. I couldn't resist. Sorry.
David Leslie, God rest his soul, he put the car, the first race of '83, he put the car on the pole. This thing weren't as good through the turns or downforce-wise as the Ralt, but Senna was so pissed because he had been like killing everyone in preseason testing, goes out at Silverstone Club Circuit for the first one, and Leslie stuck this thing on the pole, and apparently Ayrton totally lost to Dick Bennett's in the garage after qualifying.
Right.
So, expected to clean everyone up.
So did you guys arrive on the scene? You and Senna, did you guys arrive on the scene at basically the same time?
Yeah, I mean, let's think about it. Senna did Formula Ford in '81. Yeah, so within a year anyway. But I leapfrogged Formula Ford. So in '81 was my first full season in Formula Ford 2000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Senna had arrived and did Formula Ford 1600.
Right.
The next year he came back and did Formula Ford 2000 for Ralph with Russian Green.
Okay.
And I was just like customer with them. They had factory guy Tommy, and then I was like the customer car.
So you showed up with no reputation, not quite the chip that I'm sure that he kind of showed up with.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, the karting stuff was good, but certainly not at the level or anticipation of when Ayrton was coming.
Right.
And so we set up our own shop. Russian Green were based at Snetterton, and we literally built a workshop right next door. Buddy of my dad's, Mickey, real character. He used to have a quality foam products was his business in Norwich, my hometown, and he used to sell literally slabs of foam on a outdoor market, and was very successful. And he used to race karts a little bit, and he said, "Come on, let's do it." And he stepped up and bought the car and stuff. And so we started the year with a Royale because we didn't have quite enough money to do it properly. And Alan Cornock, who owned Royale at the time, was kind enough to loan us a chassis, and with Mickey's money we could kind of get the season going.
Right.
And so at the start, all the other Senna was winning every race, and I was finishing second.
Right.
And then the other Van Diemens got their act together, so now you were finishing third and you were finishing fourth. Like, wow, the car was like way overweight and just weren't as good. And if you parked it on an angle at lunchtime and came back afterwards, the chassis was
different way.
Yeah. So we realized we had to get a Van Diemen. As soon as we switched to the Van Diemen, we were right on the pace.
Yeah.
And we went out and won the first race against Ayrton when we switched to the Van Diemen at Alton Park. So that got his attention.
Sure.
Yeah.
And consequently, it was a double weekend. We did Alton on Saturday and Silverstone Club on Brands Hatch on Sunday, and I had the pole, and going in the paddock, he just like came across and like took the left front wing off.
No
you know?
way.
Yes.
It's like, okay, pal.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of my
Put you
question.
back in order here.
Right.
He's so famous for sort of having to kind of hate his competitors. Did you guys have any relationship prior to you kind of being as competitive as he was?
Well, it was funny in a way because we were literally next door neighbors, and back then you lived at the race shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8 hours a day even when you weren't driving.
Right.
I mean, you were at the shop.
Right.
So your paths crossed, and our paths crossed at lunch every day down at Ed's Calf. Ben Devlin's dad had Ed's Calf. It turned into a pub later, but in the early days it was a cafeteria. And it was before the days of everyone sort of like eating quinoa salads and stuff. It's like, are you going to have egg sausage and chips today, or are you going to have egg ham and chips? Do you know what I mean? But it was fried. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's going to hurt.
So you'd end up in the same places all of the time. So you're always doing this, walking through a door. And so you couldn't, like, it wasn't that bad, like we hated each other. But a couple of little insights to what I feel is a weird insight to Ayrton. One day we actually did sit at the same lunch table. Yeah, so we're all sitting around, and
by this point, were you beating him, or were you?
Well,
we'd had
the little. Then he kind of straightened that out. So, just to put it in perspective, I mean, that year I finished in the top 2 19 times, but only won 4 races. So you can guess who won the other 15.
Yeah.
But so it was a good little rivalry. But so anyway, we're here at lunch one day, and the food shows up, and everyone sort of like grabs the salt shaker and this, that, and the other, and the ketchup or the HP sauce, and gives it a big squirt all over you and starts to eat. And like, I'm 3 minutes in, I'm like basically half done with and I realize that Ayrton's still putting his salt, pepper, and ketchup on his food. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing? And he's like, he's got the pepper shaker, and he's like putting a little bit of pepper on the salmon.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, and then he's got the ketchup, and he's putting just enough ketchup on like literally each fry, and then he's got the salt, and he's doing this. And I'm like, and then when you think about it, well, you probably don't need salt on every single ingredient that's on the plate, and you really don't want ketchup on everything, but everyone else is just like cover it, right? And also after lunch, everyone would get on this little, you'd go to the till, to the cash register, and pay your tab, and there's like this Space Invader type game there, and so all of the boys, all the mechanics and everyone would have a little go before we went back to the shop. Sure. And Ayrton would never play. He'd watch, but he'd never play. So there'd be, I don't know, 8-10 of us sort of crowded around, huddled in the corner and playing this game, and myself and one of the mechanics could get to a certain point, and we'd typically have the high score. We'd get to this one point in this game, and you'd been bombing all this stuff and moving up and down, and you'd come through this tunnel, and then you had to like wait till you got through the tunnel and pull it down, and then dive into this other tunnel. And we'd always come down and just keep hitting the wall. So every day we got to that point in the game, and we could not figure out. Sure. So one day we're there, and some days you'd hit up here, and some days you'd hit up down here. You couldn't figure out why was it different. You know what I mean? You felt you were doing the same thing. So one day Ayrton says, "I'll play," and we're like, "You'll play? You never play."
Who's this guy?
Sure. Yeah. Come on up. So he gets through all the first stages pretty conservative. He just like escapes and doesn't do anything fancy, and his score's not high. But then he gets to this level, comes to the tunnel, boom, boom, in.
Yeah.
Was this in his first try?
Yeah.
As far as you
know.
Well,
in his first try in front of us.
Yeah.
Ed tells us he'd been down there every afternoon for 2 weeks practicing.
There it is.
And basically what you needed to do, this thing had a forward and reverse on it. So what you needed to do is have him full forward. Yeah. So when you got to the thing, because it would keep moving like this, you just reversed it up.
Yeah.
Obvious, right? None of us dummies thought of it. He had. He's watching us every day like,
yeah,
you know, and so, but he had to come and show us, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't mention that he'd been there every day.
No.
It
was like it was his first.
I guess I'll try.
It says no, he's been down every day.
New high score. Did I break it? Yeah, like, I don't know what that means. Oh, that's fantastic. So it's said that you're mentioned in every book about Ayrton that's been written about him. That you were one of the rivals that he could, lose to on a continuous basis. And I'm curious, is that something that when you hear it? Is that something that makes you kind of like, I was able to give him a run for his money on a good day? Or is it something that makes you think, if I had the right opportunities, I could have gone on to be a 3-time world champion? Or did you even care about it at all?
Do I care about it? I mean, with life, it takes different turns, right? And as I said before, I feel so lucky to still be in the game, and have a lot of work here. So would I have wished that the racing had continued a bit longer? Yeah, after the year in Formula 4 2000, a bit like the karting stuff, I had a good little battle that got me into cars, and then with the good battles we had in Formula Ford 2000, that got me the BP ride, which is a fully paid F3 deal. Brundle had it the year before, and he'd actually started to win races at the end of the year, so it's kind of a big deal for them to let him go. And put me in the car
completely. Sure.
But there was some engine changes, and Ayrton did a deal with Dick Bennett, who was really the man in Formula 3. He was just like the guru. He was just so good, so technical, and just like would be there all night, just fine-tuning everything. And so I got in there, and we just had a poor year. I mean, we just weren't on the pace, really. I mean, the Toyotas were a bit quicker. He and Brundle. Brundle got a deal with Eddie Jordan. And Ayrton won, I think, the first 8 or 9 races that year out of 20. So he just checked out. But Brundle was doing what I did the year before, like nipping at his heels. I was back 3rd, 4th, wherever, and not in the game. I mean, you weren't there. I think we had 9 podiums that year, but you were just the decorations. Do you know what I mean? You weren't a prime player. So, but Brundle really had a tremendous year. In the second half of the year, he really got underneath Ayrton's skin and got him rattled and nearly nipped the championship. I mean, it's kind of a classic Formula 3 story. There's actually a video out there.
It's just coming out recently, right?
Yeah, it came out last year. When I was on vacation last year in Italy, this guy, Mario Muth, who put it together, we sat down there, and he did a really nice job with it. So it's hard because you don't have the video support that we have now. The races really weren't covered back then, but he did a really nice job of getting with everyone and putting the story together. It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
But so that was a deal killer, because when I signed with BP, at the same time they announced that I was going to be the test driver for the Tolman F1 team.
Oh, nice.
I was supposed to get all this time in a test car. Well, as soon as the season started and Senna's kicking my ass, well, Alex Hawkridge, who owns the team,
like, nah, kid.
He's on the phone right. And Ayrton drove for him the next year, so I didn't even get in the car. But hey, it's a fine line. I mean, I was realistic about it. We weren't getting the job done, so I didn't deserve to get the shot, you know. But
so you didn't think that it was BOP or something?
Well, actually, if we'd had BOP then, we were doing in a lot better shape, because the Toyota was definitely
out of the park.
We had Volkswagen engines, and you know, every gear shift, it was just
a little bit.
And at that game, you don't get it back. You can't be giving up anything. It was. But yeah, I've always been pretty realistic about that stuff. I mean, could it have gone in a different direction? Yes, but it could have never happened. It could have stopped a lot sooner. And coming over here and having a second chance at it, same thing. I won the Atlantic thing. Won a few Indy Lights races, and just right there, and didn't happen again. But now I've been in TV for 20 years and love the sport, and it's awesome. So
where did the U.S. decision come from?
When I was racing superkarts, there was an American, Kim Campbell, who came over and raced at the Silverstone Grand Prix, the British Kart Grand Prix, and we'd become pretty good friends and stayed friends, particularly my dad and he. And Kim said, if you don't have anything, come to the States. He said, I'll give Calvin a job and come over and see if we can find him a deal, get him in with the team. So the next week, it's on the plane, and Kim had a race shop based out of Dallas, Texas, or Arlington, Texas, actually, near the stadium out there. And there's one other English guy as a mechanic, and he had his own program, which was he was going to compete in the 2-liter Can-Am Championship. And they also ran about 6 or 7 C Sports races and Sports 2000s, all this other stuff. And they had one guy as a mechanic. So I'm now the second guy. So my thought of tootling off to racetracks and meeting everyone, it's like, well, I'm either in or out. He was paying me a couple $100 a week to work on the cars, and I couldn't just say, I'm going to get on the phone for 3 hours, because we had to get this car ready to load in the trailer. So you got buried. But it was actually, after the year I'd had, it was really good for me to just get that hunger back. I mean, at that time, you talk about it wasn't easy to give up. It was really hard back then to give it up. I wanted to be, I was 23 years old, and I wanted to drive more than anything in the world. And having a year as a mechanic and realizing what that's all about. And not getting in a race car, that made me really hungry to get back in a car. And later that year, I met Mike Guay and Phil Creighton here in Atlanta, Essex Racing. And through Ralph, did Formula Ford 1600. So I never did it back there, but I did it here, and we ran in the Southeast Division in the Van Diemen. So for 85, I was back in a car, and off we went again.
Right. So did you move to Atlanta at that point?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Dallas, then I moved to Atlanta.
And you've been here ever since, right?
Lived up near Norcross, yeah.
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 That's fine.
Yeah, never went back.
There's one piece in there that I kind of want to explore a little bit, which is for anybody listening, especially younger guys who are aspiring drivers, and we always, Andy talked about not getting bitter and whatnot. There's, for somebody to say, hey, we'll give your kid a job if he comes out here and works at our shop out here in the U.S. and all that, they wouldn't just do that for anybody. So there had to be something about you that made you likable.
Well, I think racing's all about relationships and networking. And
somehow your mic moved a little.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I think racing's all about relationships, and you need people on your side.
Right.
I mean, I tell a lot of young drivers, I mean, you're not always going to be the kid that everyone wants.
Right.
And you need people pulling for you when you're going through the dips in the road, you know. And so I was just lucky that, Kim believed, he saw that what we were doing in the karts, and he thought I was a good driver. And thought that the F3 season just went sideways on us, and there might be another opportunity. And so it was very kind of him to give me the opportunity, and he was first class. And so we were off and running again, which was pretty cool. And then with the Sports 2000 stuff, Vicky O'Connor also ran that championship as well as the Atlantic stuff. And at the end of the Sports 2000 year, didn't really have anywhere to go. I mean, Mike were doing their thing. They were the importer for those two brands. Yeah. And there really wasn't anywhere to progress with Mike and Phil. And Bill and Vicky had done a deal with Mike Angus. I think he might have won the championship the year before to run an Atlantic program, and somehow it went sideways after the first race. So for the second race was Montreal, the Grand Prix support race.
Big deal.
And they called me up and said, hey, do you want to come and drive the car? So we went up there and finished second, and Scott Goodyear, Scott won the first race. He won the championship. We got close to him at the end, but not sure if Scott won at Montreal or not. But we finished second. I think Scott won, I think Ted Pratt was third, and I was second. So we got in that and went well, and then actually the guys at Road Atlanta, the Leon brothers, helped me out. Gave me a few bucks to give to Bill. I just try to pull 500 here, a grand here, and the budgets were pretty realistic. And Dennis Eade, who's a great guy who ran the team, Comprep, they're out of Chicago. He could make it happen on a shoestring, and the car was there, and Bill had committed to the car for the year, so we just little bits and kept it going and won 4 races, and I went right down to the last race of the championship. So it was fun because we missed around and nearly won it, so that was cool.
Right.
That was cool. And then Vicky got a new sponsor for the series the next year, HFC, Household Finance Corporation, and they wanted to do a car as well, so that was a natural. She was at the series, and and then they transitioned. We won the championship that year, and they wanted to move up with me and went to Indy Lights, and paid the tab for that.
So that's 87, 88 would be Indy Lights?
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, what happens?
Similar deal.
Yeah.
We won a couple of races that year. Ran with Shearson Racing, who had the Domino's Pizza program at the time. Right. And they actually branded it through Doug's daughter, Molly. So it's Molly Shearson Racing.
Okay.
But Doug had done a good job in terms of, I got introduced to him, and then he went to HFC and basically sold the deal. And it was all singing and dancing, massive rig, just beautiful, and first class, like at an IndyCar level, really. But we were quick. I mean, Tommy was doing it that year, Fangio was doing it. Bekas actually won the championship because he finished all the races. I think we had 5 mechanical DNFs. 2 of the races, 2 of which we were leading. Yeah. Because we'd never done the championship before, we were running a different battery and a different clutch, without getting into the minutiae of it all, but because the team had not run these cars before, and this stuff had been thrown away, like Mark Wider had thrown it away 2 years ago. He said, no, that's never going to work. That's never going to handle the torque. That battery will fail on you now and again. And so we paid the price for that. Otherwise, I think we could have legitimately won the championship. And then won the Atlantics, won the Indy Lights, then theoretically
he would have been the obvious.
Could have been, but it didn't happen, and no money, and that's when it started to peter off again. Did a few Atlantic races, like 2 or 3 in '89. Actually drove for Celine in race trucks and Escort Endurance Championship.
Yeah, those trucks are pretty cool. So then, does that lead to the Roush stuff?
Yeah, I drove for 1990. I did Daytona and Sebring.
Yeah.
And what happened was I went to the Gong Show. They used to have the Gong Show at the end of the year.
Can you explain what that is? Because they don't do it anymore, and a lot of people would know what the Roush Gong Show is all about.
Yeah, it'd basically bring in like 10 guys.
Yeah.
And you'd all go, it was at Sebring. I'm not sure if they always had it at Sebring's on the Sebring short course. And you'd go in there, and I'm not sure. I mean, we got a couple of runs each, maybe 2 8-10 lap runs.
Yeah.
And I think it was there. Jack Baldwin was there.
Yeah.
Stu Hayner. A couple of Atlantic guys, Jocko Cunningham, Buell, Robbie might have been there. Myself, Robbie Gordon,
Yeah.
Max Jones. But Max had just come off a Beretta year with Tommy Kendall.
Sure.
So he'd been driving these things all the time.
Right.
Stu and Jack had a lot of that. I'd never driven one before.
Right.
Never been a Sebring before. So we did the test, and it went pretty well. Max was like 7-8 tenths quicker, and I'm like, well, let's do a second day, and maybe it'll be a bit different. I mean, you're just like adjusting and learning the
right.
track.
Learning
and
which way it goes.
big heavy car from a single seater. So, but anyway, so the guy at the time who was in charge was a guy called Lee Morris, and he called me up and he said, "Carver, went really well. I think we're going to have you come to Detroit next week and do a deal and meet the sponsors." So I'm like, this is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
no
'cause
kidding.
they had an IMSA program and they had a Trans Am program. He said, "I don't know where it's going to be, whether you're going to be on the
Yeah.
IMSA side or this," and I'm just sitting there. And,
Whatever. Yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll call you next week.
And these are the Mercury Cougars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
Whistler sponsorship. Yeah.
Exactly.
Pretty historic car.
And so Monday comes, no call. Tuesday comes, no call. Wednesday, I call him. We're in a bit of a change of direction. Robbie was doing the desert truck stuff.
Robbie
Yeah.
Gordon.
Yeah, and Michael Cranifus, who was Lee's boss
Yeah.
at Ford at the top. Robbie had just got on the phone and all weekend just been beating
And just wouldn't
Cranifus
stop.
up and just saying, "I want to drive this car.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever. I'll do the desert truck stuff and I can do it." And,
Yeah,
as you can
yeah.
imagine, Robbie would.
Still
And he'd
there.
gone well,
Yeah.
but he was a bit all over the map,
Okay.
but he was fast.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it came down. They said, "Well, Michael wants Robbie to get the deal, and we'll give you the endurance seat."
Right.
So it's
Wow.
like that could have been.
Yeah.
You could have had a career like a Dorsey, because
Yeah.
Dorsey was there actually as like the benchmark.
Yeah.
Right.
He was running
Because
out.
he was the guy.
He was the guy.
He was the Whistler Mustang guy.
Yeah.
Mercury's all that.
Yeah, and Max then drove alongside Dorsey the following year.
Yeah.
So it was that close, and that could have been a game changer.
Yeah.
That could have been another 10, 15 years in the game, but
Right.
it didn't happen. So Lee White was the team manager at the time at Roush, and he says, "Okay, we're going to put you in for Daytona and Sebring, and you're going to be, we'll pay you this, and we'll give you this much money, and you're driving with Robbie." And I'm like, "Well, forget the prize money, because we ain't going to be finishing." And we go out and win both races.
Nice.
I mean, because he
This
was
guy's a problem.
he was just a wild man,
Yeah.
but just raw speed, like
Yeah.
you can't believe,
Right,
just
yeah.
raw ability, and he kept his nose clean, and it was unbelievable. Yeah, so we won both races.
I'm a big believer in not trying to do what somebody else does, because you got to do what's kind of true to your personality. But do you, at that age, it's probably different now, but at that age, did you look at that with any regret, like, I should have called him 12 times a day? It doesn't seem to me to be your nature to be that guy to pester and pester and pester and pester.
I think I've changed. I mean, I think, I agree with you, but I was dealing with Lee, and Robbie was dealing with Michael.
Yeah.
Lee
Right,
had,
yeah,
Lee had
yeah, so
told
he was
me, and
going above
then
him,
the
right.
word from above came down to Lee,
Sure.
like, "Hey,
Yeah. Sure.
hold up. We're going to talk this through and see if that," because I think
Right.
they already had a commitment with the Desert Trucks
Sure.
program,
So he was
and
well
sponsors.
connected
So
in politically, yeah.
Robbie still had to do it. They couldn't just pull the pin on that,
Right.
but they figured out a way where he could do both.
Right.
And who knows? I mean, there was a connection there. Robbie was driving for Ford,
Sure.
Right.
and I wasn't. I was just someone who came in for the
Yeah.
day and went pretty quick. And they said, "Well, we'll give you a shot,"
Right.
So, but yeah, who knows? I mean, I think I'd have needed more of an in as well.
Yeah.
And then a bit of pestering could have helped. But Robbie, as his personality is
It's
vastly
a little
different.
full
to
Different,
throttle.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, is at that age, were you kicking yourself at all? Or were you kind of accepting of it even then?
I was disappointed.
Yeah.
I mean, because you said about 95, was that easy to just give it up? It's like it was easier then, because it happened in Europe, and now it
Yeah.
happened again.
You've been through it,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? So it's like, do you have
Here
it
we
in
go
you to
again. Yeah.
go through three? I mean,
Yeah,
there's
I
guys
mean,
who
it's-
have.
Yeah.
But
It's like girls filing restraining orders, right, guys?
right,
Right?
guys?
Right?
Guys?
We're all right?
Stop looking at me.
You get that third one, and it's like,
Then you know it's real.
Yeah.
You agreed.
Absolutely.
But you get to go on and win the Daytona 24-hour, which has got to be a highlight of the career. It's like that's kind of one of my goals in my career. You get to win the Sebring 12 hours. Now, that's probably before they were giving out Rolexes per class.
That's right.
Yeah, it sucks.
yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. I think they started like a year or two later or
So
something.
that's the story. I hear that story from
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, that was
yeah.
before.
Yeah, that was before. But so it's funny, after Sebring, I remember Tommy Kendall saying, dude, how did you do that? No one wins Daytona and Sebring. I mean, 'cause he'd been around. I'm like, oh.
And that's back when cars were breaking, like, all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, no reliability existed.
It was funny. At Daytona, we ended up with a massive lead early, like you say, about cars braking. And Jack Roush wasn't at the test, but he was at the race. And he didn't really say nothing to me all weekend. Mm-hmm. So I think we ended up with like a 5-lap lead after like 12 or 13 hours or something, because everyone else had drama and we were just trucking. Yeah. So it's in the middle of the night, and someone on the radio says, Calvin, it's Jack. Slow the hell down. And I was like, Jack? Who the hell is Jack?
Hey, Jack, it's Calvin. Off.
So,
sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit back to now you're kind of going in the direction of the commentary stuff. You're doing some coaching and things like that. And it's always been like a joke I've had that I kind of said with Sean earlier. Has any Little League dad, go-kart dad ever come up and been like, hey, Calvin, here's a cool $1,000 of cash. Can you mention my kid on TV a little bit more?
No, not a bribe.
Like Dion Von Mulkey's
Yeah,
dad.
like we're about to, were they South African?
Hey, what is the deal with the? I fucking hate that guy. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's a spoof, and then some people last week was like,
No, they hate that
No,
guy.
yeah, Marco. No, so Marco is an evil guy. Like Marco Seifried is one of the worst human beings on the face of the planet.
Tell people what we're talking about in case they don't
in
know
case
you.
people don't
Ras
know.
did it as well, right?
Yeah,
Ras is the best.
No. Okay, so there is, if you check out the Magnus Twitter and Instagram, there is a random, not just one, there's like 8 videos that feature Marco Seifried and Renee Rast looking at Dion Von Mulkey in the background, who has no idea what's going on, and going, I fucking hate that guy. And
at like corporate Audi functions, drivers meetings,
drivers meetings,
places of business. Yeah.
So I'll tell you the real truth, which is it really had no thought, which I know is shocking because it looks like a very well made video. But basically, so the Magnus guys, so it's Seifried, Rast, Potter, and Lally at an Audi function for media. And you've had to go to a few of these things, these like mixers that manufacturers will put on. BMW, basically reserves a room and everybody and anyone can go in. So Audi does this, where basically it's a little B conference room at the Daytona Media Center, and so it's we're told it's going to be all these Audi media folks. And Audi PR department does a great job, but let's just say USA Today wasn't there.
Copy.
It was Joe and Joe's blog, and
John DeGeese.
Yeah, John DeGeese. No, John DeGeese doesn't even have to go to this because he knows these guys.
He's above it.
Yeah, John DeGeese is above it. Yeah, exactly. So these guys look up to John DeGeese. Yeah. So so my point is there's and it's every Audi driver at Daytona is there.
Yeah.
So there's I think there were 4 cars that were with Audi this year.
Right.
Times 4. So 16 drivers and 4 media people.
Right.
And all 4 of them are like blogs that none of us know. And so no one has any interest in talking to them. So it's literally just us hanging out. Right. And of course, Dion Von Mulkey is an incredibly friendly, nice guy who just loves talking to people. So he's just like talking to anybody. Of course, most of these blog guys aren't comfortable, so they're going to, of course, be attracted to the nice, approachable guy.
Sure.
And here's the assholes at Magnus just hanging out in the corner like, this thing. So, so I literally, I just pull up my iPhone, and I'm just like, Marco, turn around. And then that was it.
That was it.
I
fucking hate that guy.
and I had to say, and Marco's response was, well, who's Dion?
It's like, sure, what is this?
This is why I love Marco so much, because he'll do anything, that we ask him to do. But yeah, so it really started because we were bored at a media function, and then it's like, oh, Marco did these. Hey, Renee.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, no, I'll do it. Okay. Yeah. It's and then and that started it. So now every time Renee or Marco is in the same vicinity as Dion, we just do it. And Dion's such a nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
And so
kid.
it's a lot of fun. But But yeah, and this was a month that our podcast had been out and doing well, and we put months of work into the mini brick video and
brick figure
video. But I tell you, of all the videos that we've done in the last 12 months, the Tinder one and all that, the Dion Von Mulkey videos are by far the favorite thing I've done in the last 12 months.
I think I was one of our producers. Was it Coda? I was Coda because
we just did one at Coda. With Roush.
He said, "What's going on? What's with Von Mulkey?" I'm pretty sure it's
didn't
like
go well.
Yeah.
It didn't go well. He's out.
He said, "No, there's some going on."
See, when that happens,
Nice
like
job, dude.
I think you know
just
this,
made
but
his whole
like
week.
to me, it's a success when no one knows it's a joke.
Yeah,
like
Right.
those are the best. Like when Ryan and I get in our bullshit
We did
Twitter
a Twitter
fights.
feud a couple
Twice
years
now,
ago.
yeah.
And it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So yeah.
So back to Dion Von Mulkey's dad
Yeah.
bribing you for
never happened.
No, but you never get any pressure from because I
You get people who are like, "Oh, can you get him on TV?"
Sure,
He's gonna.
we're
ask
getting
his-
it. We're getting it for the podcast.
Oh, yeah,
like,
really?
my kid would be great on your show,
Yeah.
and I'm like, who?
Yeah.
Well,
Not Brian. I mean, you get the little league dad who wants their boy on there because he
Yeah.
thinks he's great. Yeah, there's some of that, but never to the point like drop you a few
Right.
bob and get him on. But
Well, if that happens from here on out, we expect a cut for the idea. I noticed we asked Rutledge Wood when we had him on last year that when you got the Top Gear ride, you got a ton of haters, and he's like, "Oh God, I had people that hated me for reasons I didn't even know existed." And about a month ago, I'm like scrolling through Twitter, and somebody retweeted someone giving Brian Till a bunch of
for the F1
about
stuff.
F1 or
Yeah,
something, and
yeah.
I was like, "Who's mad at Brian Till?"
yeah.
Do you get tweet hate at all?
I'm kind of the middle ground. I don't get a lot of love, but I don't get a lot of hate. So I don't know what that means exactly. I think I'm kind of just.
I can fix this.
I think
I
I'm
can get you the hate.
I can
get you the
bring
hate.
the
I
hate.
guess that's why I've been there 20 years. A kind of an industry survivor.
Right,
you know,
just
so,
like middle of the road.
Yeah,
Middle of the road. That's
But,
where you want to be.
A JB or a Tommy,
Yeah.
they're. I mean, you're going to have your high points. Do you know?
They
what I mean?
also put themselves out there with comments and cheeky segments with drunk
Yeah.
fans and stuff.
Yeah, I need this job. So. Justin says what I'm thinking, but
Right.
I'm not going to get fired,
Right.
and I can still laugh at it, right? You know?
Yeah, TK had a couple of gems during Petite this
Oh,
past
yeah.
year, and I'm like, I guess he just doesn't care anymore. And
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah,
going to be good.
I think that one got a bit of attention since then. Actually,
How often actually do you find yourself biting your tongue of just like not saying what was he thinking, or or even just among some
we
of the other
often
guys.
talk about doing a show when you know you're actually done. Like you're fired.
Yeah, like you're just going for it. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
Not to name Andrew Marriott's name, but do you guys ever just leave the mic on for your own entertainment?
He and Alan DeCadenet are two of the greatest guys to work with. I mean, I love Andrew's passion. I'm not sure. Andrew's in his 70s. I'm not sure which end of that right now. But, I mean, his passion and his knowledge, I just love the guy. I mean, every time he shows up, I mean, he just brings something to the table. But, I mean, we were...
Well, he definitely brings the unexpected.
Yeah, he does. And like Greg Creamer said the other day, he said, I think Andrew thinks he's on radio because he just like turns his mic on and just starts chatting. There's no throwdown to Andrew. So like, oh, Andrew's on.
Yeah.
Because he just loves it. He just can't help it. He gets so excited.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. I did Sebring for MRN a couple of years ago. I helped them out with Greg Kramer was one of the hosts, and I got to watch him work kind of thing. And I was supposed to be like the color commentary basically. And one of the things I applaud to this day, and anytime I talk to somebody that's going to be broadcasting, I always try to wish them well on their broadcast. Like Kenton Cook's been doing the MX-5 races for Mazda, and whenever I see him, like, hey, good luck today, or good job. Because what I learned very quickly was that you guys don't always have something to talk about. And so when you don't have something to talk about, you can't have dead air.
Right.
So Greg was like able to come up with yeah, that's the car that 2 years ago was built in the garage at so-and-so's when they had a fire. And you're like, why is he talking about that? And it's like, because he's got nothing else to say right now, because everything's normal.
Right.
There's no story. There's no breaking thing yet. So he's got to keep the tempo going.
Well, especially in the lesser funded productions where you don't have a pit team you can cut back to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like World Challenge, it's just 2 guys in a booth, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you've
Yeah.
got to make
We
it
did
work.
Sprint
Well,
X
this
this year.
Oh,
Our first race
God,
was
with
8 cars at most.
8
Yeah,
cars.
right.
And it was like, but we
60
cut
minutes,
really
yeah.
tight, so we just follow 1 or 2 cars.
Yeah.
And with the pit stops, and people loved it. We
Yeah.
just managed to just keep it going. And
Right.
Greg Gills just said that was amazing.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Do that.
It's like,
Yeah, you could have had 30 cars there. That
Sure.
wouldn't have been any different. Just the way they cut the show. So Greg's amazing. I mean, again, the passion that he has for. I mean, he
yeah.
comes from a very different. I mean, a lot of us are ex-racers, and Greg, he did a little bit of amateur racing, and
Yeah.
I think he'd like to have done a bit more. But he's coming at it from a different perspective, and to think that he used to do corner workers,
Yeah.
working and stuff like that. So he's had this love of motorsport. When we did the World Challenge stuff, we're now on site. Ironically, the live stuff with IMSA, I'm not on site, and the World Challenge stuff, I'm on site, but it's tape delayed.
Yeah.
Figure that one out. But we used to do them in a voiceover fashion in Indy. Now, Greg's already been at the event because he used to do the track announce
Right.
for the series.
So he knows what's
He
happening.
knows what's happened.
Yeah.
He's called the race already, and I'll come down to breakfast before we go to the studio, and he's down there taking notes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's on it. Yeah.
He never mails it in. Do you know
So-
what I mean?
yeah,
does he ever
So-
try to sound particularly knowledgeable and predict moves?
I was
going
gonna
to
say I would totally do that.
Yeah,
Be
just
like,
like-
I'm looking at that car. It looks like it might have a motor problem.
Yeah. I won't name names, but we have a moniker for that. Oh, yeah, he
Yeah.
Eversley'd that one. Do you know?
Yeah.
what I
There
mean?
you go. Yeah. That means he won by a lap.
I got a feeling that rear suspension, I mean, I reckon in about 3 hours that thing could start to fall apart.
Right.
I've been so lucky, though, to work with some great people. Lee was great. I mean, we were good mates. We used to live like a
Yeah.
9-iron or a 3-wood for him from each other.
That's a golf joke.
Yeah, I was trying to follow. Not going to pretend.
And I think probably, with no disrespect to the group we have now or we've had since then, but I think back in the Grand Am days, we had Lee, Dorsey, and myself in the booth, and
Yeah.
Brian and Chris Neville in the pits. And
Yeah.
our bosses used to said that there's no other broadcast team that like you guys. He said, if I want to find one of you guys, I can call any one of you because you're all going to be together.
Oh.
Do you know
That's
what
cool.
I mean?
Yeah.
It's just your
But that's
butt-
got to be so
Right.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we were just mates, and
Yeah.
it was 10 years or more ago, and you'd party a little bit more, not to excess, but every night you'd be out to dinner together,
Yeah.
and it was just a fun time.
So outside of the commentary thing, you also do driver management, but I've never seen like any advertising for it. I've never seen a website, or I don't know if you have a company name or whatever. But I know you work with big, really prolific drivers in the series.
Yeah, I mean, Joey's probably the biggest one that
Yeah.
we've worked together, and something that I had to think long and hard about, and I went to my bosses at Speed way back when to make sure they were cool with it, and they said they didn't have to say anything.
Yeah,
to
right.
it. So like, what you can't do is like be biased in the broadcast. So yeah, it's been fun with Joey. We've been great mates, and there's another handful of guys that I work with, just on terms of really leveraging being in the industry for so long, in terms of pointing them in the right direction, making their deals better,
Yeah.
getting them a step ahead of the game for the next program. So it's been rewarding. I mean, I like it, and I think ultimately at the end of the day, if the broadcasting should stop for whatever reason, you're always trying to create something new for yourself moving forward. So there's not a lot of people who do it, and I think I get asked a lot to help other drivers, but I just try and keep it really small and just.
What I assume from actually, I kind of want to break this down a little more, but I also assume from a credibility standpoint, the more guys you represent, the less they're going to listen to you
If
when you
you're
say you got to
representing
take a look at
everybody.
this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was actually I was talking about this with Lally earlier today, who does not have a manager, but we were obviously going to have dinner, and I have my whole other career in Hollywood, and so the need for agents and managers actually makes sense over there in my world, because there's 1,000 studios and production heads and whatnot, so you need somebody that's networked into that so that you can just do your acting or directing or whatever it is. But to me, in the world of sports car, it's the same 12 assholes all across the paddock. So do you really need somebody representing you? And Andy, who doesn't have a manager, said, yeah, actually, had he had you, there might be a couple deals that he didn't get around, because when you're talking to ex-team owner or manufacturer representative, they're going to listen to what Calvin Fish has to say about take a look at this guy.
Right.
And I guess I don't really have a question outside of like it seems like that's kind of the role you play in this.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in my mind, I just like to have just a few guys that I help out. I get a lot of satisfaction of, you know, what Joey's been able to do has been fun. You know, to get into DTM, obviously it didn't work out as we'd all hoped for,
But a big opportunity.
And
Yeah.
how early
Like-
did you come into Joey's career?
Thank you.
End of 2010.
Okay, so by this point, you'd already been thickly
he
in
was
sports
just
cars.
firmly established,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
was just at the time. I think earlier that year, he looked like he talked to me a little bit, and he said, "Oh man, I'm really struggling here," and I don't think he had a deal locked down, and he did race, and then he got him with BMW because he's been with Tom and stuff, and then he got the factory deal, and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, you know, first and foremost, the broadcasting is number one, and I have to be, you know, conscious of that totally." And
So prior to Joey, you weren't a manager, so this is a very new thing.
yeah, I mean, I'd help Ben Devlin out a little bit,
Yeah.
just because of we're from the same. age.
That's
Yeah,
so
it
funny
makes
to me
sense,
that like his dad was. I knew his dad was around, but like when I read that article about Ed's Cafe, I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
because that was my first year in racing as a mechanic. Was when Ben came over,
Right.
And he was, I think, only a year or two older than me. So he and I would always get room together and pal around together because we're close to the same age. So.
But I've been asked, I mean, some names. Sam Hornish's dad asked me way back. Dan Weldon beat me up for a long time. And
Yeah.
it's just I was too busy. I was back when I was doing
Sure.
riding drives, and I was
Sure.
just,
Yeah.
and I knew what it took. I mean, it's like when you
Yeah.
say yes.
Yeah, then it's your problem now.
Yeah,
Well-
you got to be as committed as a driver as in terms of this is his
Making it happen for
career,
your
and
guy, yeah.
yeah. So when you say yes, it's like you better be in, you know.
So where did the term argy bargy come from? And is that the most common thing fans say to you?
Well, it's weird. I don't know why. I mean, it is a term from the UK that you'll use.
Okay.
And it is, I think, if you look at it, was like disagreement or something.
Sure, sure.
So it is real. Everyone
Yeah.
said, like, bullshit. Well, no, actually, it is real. But some of the people who pay the bills didn't like it. It was like not, you know, professional enough, I guess.
Get
into-
outta here.
Yeah,
Come
so
on.
I actually backed off.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I
Yep.
actually
Now it's
backed
your
Bring
thing.
it back.
Yeah,
Bring
yeah.
it back. Okay, so I'm going to start using it in
back-
every interview I do. We'll make it a thing. Actually, this podcast will make it a thing.
we're hashtag argy bargy.
We can
We
actually
need to have a little
influence
bet going
people.
because
Wait, so
Rockefeller and I had a
recently
bet
you
one.
backed off of it.
Yeah, probably a couple of years ago.
I got no.
It's
no,
coming back.
Yeah,
no,
I
it's
got
happening.
word like, we're not really into that. If you can use a
At
different.
Fox Sports. What are you doing? FS1.
Okay, so
IMSA.
if you're listening to this, and we know you are because last year the joke was no one's going to hear this.
Yeah,
But
and
then our numbers were for some reason really good.
And now Spencer can't go anywhere without being told he killed somebody. So.
Right. So now we're going to have you tweet at Calvin Fish, hashtag argy bargy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll make it a thing. And then when that comes up, you can look at my Twitter feed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
bro.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
But Rockefeller and I were at a Pirelli. I think it was like
we'll bleep that
2003, 2004, and Mike and I were at this Pirelli deal,
We'll bleep
and
that out.
there was this guy talking about Pirelli tires and the fabric of the company.
Stop saying Pirelli tires.
Yeah,
This is the Continental Tire podcast.
sorry. This tire manufacturer.
There you go.
Yes.
Boom.
And they're talking about the fabric of the company. He must have said it like 18 times, and Rocky and I are like looking at each other like, enough of the fabric. And I said, okay, we've got a bet. Whenever I can say fabric in an interview with you, you owe me $50, and whenever you can get it back,
I like that.
$50.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
fabric. That's
Yeah.
good.
fabric.
That's
So
good.
we'd pick a
Yeah.
word, and that was pretty funny. Cause,
Synergy.
and sometimes, and when I went to the booth, I'd then call down and say, okay, Chris, ask Rocky what the fabric of his suit is.
Oh,
this week.
there you
And
go.
he'd say it, and then Rocky's like, there, that's another $50.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Red cream
That's
is the
awesome.
best. We were doing the runoffs one year, and you'd alternate teams, and it was Greg and I don't know if it was Dorsey or anyway. I was not on Greg's team, so you'd do a race, then you jump in and out of
Yeah.
the booth, or you do two races. And so I was in the booth. I think it was Formula 4 to Formula 4 2000, and you had Jonathan Bottoms and someone Dick, and they were around the track at the same
Yes.
time. And I said, so I slid him this little piece of paper. I said, buy your dinner if you can get. And within 10 seconds,
Got
he
it.
said, oh, Dick, down the inside of Bottoms. Oh, and that's the 69 upside down. And the gravel. I mean, just like put it straight in there. I'm like, wow, that didn't take long. I still
yeah.
haven't bought him dinner, but yeah.
So when it's the runoffs, you just don't give a shit.
Oh, the runoffs. That I mean, when
You just
I had
blow it
a,
out.
back in the old days, I used to have like a minimum 25 event a year deal with Speed when we had a lot more racing platforms. So where it was like you didn't know what you were doing, and it would get to the runoffs time. And it wasn't that I don't love the runoffs, because I do. I mean, I'm all about what it is about.
They're getting better and better.
Yeah, but to prep for it, and you got Greg there who knows everyone, because he's been to every freaking
He actually
SEC.
knows them.
Yeah, he knows them. He knows their crew chief, and he knows every corner worker on every corner.
Name. Yeah.
And then you'd get me and Hobbs in there, and Hobbs is like, well, that red one looks quick today. And oh, the blue one just passed the black one. Do you know what I mean? And, of course, you get back to me, like, want to be perfect. So I'd, like, try and run around and get some homework on it. And it just, I mean, I'd just come out the end of that week just totally exhausted.
1,000 cars.
Because, it's just like, it's such a tremendous event, but you just felt you were so unprepared to do it justice.
Right.
But, it is tricky.
Are there, like, golden rules that you can't mention on the air? Like, for example, Johnny O'Connell has gotten off for attempted murder, and it is never mentioned on the air.
Yeah, he tried to kill Dario Franchitti. You knew about that, though.
I did, yeah. He was within 2 seconds of that happening.
That's actually a good question. Like, since you didn't go to any sort of school for commentary or anything like that, at any point were they like, okay, the 7 words you can't say, anything about personal stuff you can't say, or is it just one of those things where they're like with the Joey Hand thing, where it's like it's understood you don't favor a driver,
right? But
is there like a rule book for commentary where they're like, oh, whoa, you actually said this and we can't?
There isn't, but I'll never forget at Le Mans one year, when we used to go to Le Mans, we had this company used to handle all the RF equipment, and you'd get there and it was a bit of a shambles. I loved the guys, but they'd have like this box of crap on the table, and you're just flown from the other side of you'd done a bunch of prep for this race, and the piece of equipment you're about to put on your head, they're like screwing it together and duct tape and doing all this. And so I was going to go back on the air like in the middle of the night, and stuff's not working. So I'm frustrated, because I've been off the air for 3 hours. I'm ready to get back in the show, and it was an exciting race, and I just want to get back in there and participate, and stick the stuff on and start working. So they're like fumbling around. And apparently during this time, John Paul Belmondo had been taken out of the race, and Amanda Stratton was a reporter that we had down in the pits, obviously female girl, and she interviews John Paul Belmondo, and he says, "This f***ing took me out." And Rick Miner, our boss at Speed, came out of the truck like. So that's one thing that doesn't go down. So, and she was pregnant at the time. So to a female, you don't say it anyway, and then to a female, pregnant female on the air. And the best part was she just kept rolling like nothing had happened.
I get it. Yeah. Okay, so a very important note that's our first C word.
That is our first C word. We're going to bleep everything.
Yeah,
and by C, we don't mean continental.
But in England, that's the funny thing. In England, like people.
Yeah, people say it so freely, right?
I remember we were over at the house. You know Jeff Perner?
Yeah, very well.
And
I know who he is very well. Yeah.
And a bunch of the guys. It was when Speed first got F1, so I think it was on ESPN.
Yeah.
And like the day of the race, Bernie did a swap around. So I got all these people over to watch the F1 race.
Yeah.
And it's on Speed. Well, I didn't have Speed, and we're sitting there to watch ESPN. It's like, turn it on, it's not on.
Yeah.
So I got my cousin on the phone. This is 96 maybe. I got my cousin on the phone giving me a blow-by-blow of what's going on.
Sure.
And he says, Villeneuve's driving like a complete So I say, Villeneuve's driving like a complete... And I see all these guys, because their wives are with them, they all go...
Because you're defaulted to your English at
Yeah,
that
it's
point.
like, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
and they're like,
You know,
and all the girls are like,
not okay.
it's like in England, you use it. Stiffy
yeah,
and I,
really.
Yeah.
You should see some of my texts, sort of like.
Let's see them. Let's read them out loud.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Stiffy and I and Kelly Stavis, fiance Gavin, we have like a Formula One little bet thing, and with the grief we give each other.
Sure.
So like, the C word will be used like 3 times in every 10 words.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like
Has there ever been somebody you've had to interview that you were legitimately starstruck by, or like a big fan of, so you couldn't wait to talk to?
I remember this Champ Car race at Long Beach, and Paul McCartney was there
Oh, yeah.
with his wife at the time, Heather Mills.
Sure. Yep.
Well,
That's the one that got half, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, this is pretty funny because so they're like Paul McCartney's going to be here for he'd either been to I think Newman or Letterman, I don't know. Some reason he was in town and
Yeah,
someone had said
yeah.
come at the race, so McCartney shows up, and they're like, "Hey, McCartney's down in the pit lane. You got to go down and see him." So run down there, and he's with Heather Mills. And I said, "Hey, mate, can we have a chat?" He said, "Yeah, mate, no problem, no problem." So I'm chatting to him, and it was loud.
Yeah.
Pit lane races going on. And so we're having a chat. What are you doing here? Oh, I was in town. Da, 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 da. So I asked him, I can't remember how I put it, but I basically said, you know, who's the quick driver in the family? Like,
You were Heather, yeah.
and he didn't hear me. And I almost said, who's the leadfoot in the family?
Nice.
And I had no idea. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Right.
And then
right.
afterwards they said, you know that, and I'm
This
like,
is gonna-
oh mate, I'm like, I was this close to saying it, and you could just
Yeah.
imagine how that would have
Yeah,
gone down.
yeah, like a lead balloon.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had a leg to stand on.
Speaking of the F-bomb, I nearly had an F-bomb on the air once.
That was one of my questions I had for you.
At Le Mans, it was the end of the race, and we're doing like a final thoughts thing. So you've been 24-hour race, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And okay, we're going to do a whip round, everyone's thoughts on the race, and everyone goes, and it comes in Calvin, and I go, and they haven't turned my mic on, and I go again, and the mic's still not on, and I go again, and I'm like, turn that, and I mean, it was just as it opened up.
Right.
But that's as close as it's been.
So, keeping your own clients out. You know, you've driven against Senna. You've managed drivers. Thinking about the current, let's say, under 25 crop. Who in the modern era would you say gets it?
Why does that have to be under 25?
Because I don't want to get you going, what about me?
Could say 30 and under. I'm 32.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
But no, like I honestly don't think of that many 25-year-old guys that you could say
They could really say got it. Okay.
Because there's still
I'll go under
there's only
30.
3 of them.
But I'm just saying.
Anybody other than me at this table who gets it. Is that better? and that
Probably
doesn't
so.
mean that I do.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't want to name names, that's fine. Like, what are the ingredients that you go, okay, this kid, he's got that thing.
I think Dane's done a great job this year.
Holy
Called it.
yeah, okay.
I said that.
You said
just-
you were going to say Dane.
Yeah.
Because
Which I agree with.
I think he brings all the ingredients, and I think this year he's been able to take risks and still bring it home.
Yeah.
And just with the dynamic there, and you know, with the team, I mean, Crispina as well are really tough to beat.
Yeah.
And
They've been there forever.
yeah, they've been there forever, and he knows in certain races, particularly the shorter races, that you got to make it happen now, and he's made it happen. He's pretty determined this year, so I think his year has been pretty spot on.
What's your take on modern racing? I mean, obviously you came up when it was like cutthroat, and in a world that loved motorsports in England in the 50s through even now, they still are very proactive on trying to get someone to F1, whereas over here it's not really a priority by any means. Where do you see racing going as a whole? And you probably see the numbers on TV ratings and things like that none of us are privy to, probably for a good reason.
Right.
What's your take? Can we fix it? Are we wasting our time?
I don't know. I think BOP, I mean, if I look at it from a personal standpoint, when I'm at the track talking to teams, it monopolizes 90% of your discussions that you have with people.
Yeah.
So that's really unfortunate. But I guess the sport has become such a huge investment for a manufacturer, for example, to step into the IMSA championship, whether it's GTD or GT Le Mans, that they almost need some guarantees. It's like, well, this is going to come out. It's like, well, what matters? You're either going to be BOP'd up or down.
Yeah.
And long as you're somewhere in the box,
They'll
you
figure
should
it
be
out.
okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes it more attractive that they can. I'm not saying one does, but you could almost sell that. It's like, well, long as you're in here,
Yeah.
we'll get you so
Right.
you can
Yeah.
be competitive.
Right.
So I guess it's a way of attracting manufacturers, because it is a huge investment, and if you get it wrong,
Yeah. Could be a
know,
waste of
but
time and
when
money.
you go back to like stuff your dad worked with and stuff, where the innovation would win races, and days of even going back to like late 80s, 90s with Nissan or Toyota and coming up with these GTP cars and boom, 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 you know, you're whatever, 2 seconds quicker than anyone or whatever. Yeah, I mean, those days are just gone. So I guess in some ways it makes the racing, but I can't imagine, can you imagine having like BOP and F1? So you don't have to have it. I mean, innovation there is at its highest level. They create a set of regulations, but it's not like when Red Bull was struggling, they gave them anything.
Yeah,
they just had to
exactly
work hard and come back and develop the car. So now they're race winners again. So the driver ratings thing is just a mess. It's just really unfortunate.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all know who's a pro and a non-pro. Do you know what I mean? And there's obviously a really grey line there, but like anything with racing, you want that advantage. So you're going to. I mean, it's like Trump talking about his taxes. Do you know what I mean? If it's there, if there's a loophole, then you're going to run right through it, right? So if there's a silver driver, whether it's a Marco Seifried or whoever, and he's a silver, or Paltala when he ran with Turner a couple of years ago, it's like,
of course they're going to do that.
Of course you're going to do it, right? You're stupid not to.
Yeah. What did your little girl watch on TV?
What does she? The missus doesn't let her watch a lot of TV.
Oh, interesting.
But she, it's Peppa Pig or Mickey Mouse Club. She's 3.5, so it's.
It's so funny to me, like, because like Spence has kids now, and like other friends I have, and these are all like guys that are totally cool guys, but they know names like Peppa Pig and all. It's always funny to see that change. How'd you meet Heather?
Through her mom.
Okay. Was she from Atlanta as well, or did she move here from?
She's from Chicago.
Okay.
And she'd been living in California, and I'd been living up in Chicago, and was living with a girl, and we went in different directions. And then I'm up there, all the family came in. They're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "You're up here. It's like the tundra. Do you know what I mean?" It's like,
right here,
right. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need to make a move. So the freebie newspaper had landed on the driveway, which typically goes straight in the recycle bin. Somehow it had made it onto the counter that week.
Okay.
Everyone had left after Christmas and said, you should be making a move. So I open up the freebie newspaper, and there's this lady who's like the #1 real estate agent in the area. I'm like, I'll give her a call. So it's Heather's mum. So we meet, and she puts the house on the market, and Heather had just moved back from Berkeley, California. She'd been out there teaching. And so she moved back, and Heather's mum insists it wasn't a setup. But she said, "Oh, you'd really like Heather, and you guys, you both like to travel, and this, that, and the other." And so I'm like, oh, this is like not really cool, because if I don't like her and she's my real estate, I'm thinking, well, why not? I got the perfect house. She's really nice, but I think it's a bit weird. You try to sell my house, so I got the perfect house out, and we met. And what was funny, so it was the three of us went to dinner. This little Mexican
Mom
place.
came.
Mom came.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
How old are you at this
weird.
point?
This was 2008.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fairly recent.
So Mum came, and so it's going really well, and Heather and I are like clicking, and so I said, "Okay, anyone want to go for a drink?" And Mum says, "Yeah, I'll go." That's not the idea, Mum.
No. Let me ask that again. Yeah.
But the funny thing was, and Heather was absolutely so. The rest is history. We're obviously married and got Livy now, and so this was like, say, February, I think, and then she moved in by the summer, and then I'd already committed. Where I live now, I'd already committed to building the house down here. Okay. So I hadn't sold yet, but I'd committed to building. So this was going on. So I said, "Well, I'm moving to Atlanta. Are you cool with that?" And she said, yeah, I moved back, but I don't really like the cold either. So that was all good.
Right.
So we're moving, and we're entering my office. And like a week after we met, Heather's mum had almost like put this resume of Heather in my mailbox.
Nice.
With all these like letters from like people she'd worked for. And
references.
Heather's like, she said, "What's this?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, your mum dropped that off like a couple of weeks after we met, and she was like on the rev limit."
Not cool, Mom.
Yeah,
I swear it's not a setup. Here's everything you need to know ever. Yeah. Baby pictures.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Nice. That's funny. That's That's 2 real estate agent stories because Johnny O apparently had no intention of moving from Sonoma.
Right.
And somebody talked him into trying to go work at Bondurant full-time in Phoenix or whatever. And so he ends up getting a real estate agent. And the real estate agent's, oh, you can buy a great house down there for less money than here. And he moves down there, and that gets him the Nissan test because he's in the right place at the right time. So trust your real estate agent.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, literally from a freebie newspaper that could have gone
Could have gone the other way.
to
Yeah.
you're married with a beautiful daughter. So, it doesn't take much to
That's pretty cool.
change life's direction. But all good stuff.
How was the food, by the way?
It was great.
Good.
How was
And this
yours?
is kind of your place?
Um,
One of a few.
yeah, it's, like I said, we're lucky around here. There's within 5 minutes, there's a bunch of decent places. Yeah, so
Yeah. Well, I would say Continental's got the check.
I'm finished.
Wow, that was such a great episode. That guest really knew how to tell a story.
Did you like that Calvin Fish, Ryan Eversley, who has been sitting with me through all of these edits?
You're welcome, Sean. I'm right here.
Awesome. Now, I love Calvin Fish. The dude gives us the time. He's awesome to hang out with. He's just sort of a guy. But more importantly, it gives me an excuse to play some of the greatest British punk rock of all time. And that includes an amazing group called The Exploited. And I'm sorry, Calvin. Here's a song called Sex and Violence. Enjoy.
I want to go to Uttersfeld.